you are the carer of a loved one just getting out of hospital into rehab, or you are the person yourself just being released from hospital and you've had a long stay, this is the video for you to work out what you aren't told often about recovery. And sometimes during that time you've been overwhelmed with information, just like before if you'd had an accident or before a major operation. There's so much information to take on board, it feels totally unsustainable about how much you can see or do. This video goes through 5 important things that you sometimes don't realize that when you're leaving hospital or caring for a loved one, that can really help out their recovery and how well and safely that can become. So my little friend here is going to work through these 5 important things, and hopefully this will help them or you get through to the next stage and give you some really important points and tips for having a speedy recovery and a return to better health. Let's hit the first one. When you've had any length of stay in hospital, or you've lost muscle tone, or you're still using walking sticks or feeling quite frail, one of the first things that you have to feel safe and you can feel very vulnerable around is any wet surfaces. So grabbing a great bath mat or shower mat is a must-have for any situation. So those that haven't used a bath mat before, this is one of the things that you'll really need to make sure that you don't slip on any wet surfaces. Often your balance is a lot more vulnerable to little slips or stumbles, and so having it on a wet surface is a great way of making sure that you don't re-injure yourself, or sometimes even the fact that if you don't, just a slip can make you really feel quite vulnerable and afraid, and you get less mobile. So making sure any wet surfaces that you're going to be near or walking through, or obviously cleaning, that you have a non-slip bath mat will actually make your recovery a much safer option. I feel sometimes when you're in that warrior mode of getting through recovery that you shouldn't be vulnerable to have things that are increase your safety and making sure that you don't re-injure yourself. First tip is grab a bath mat, any wet surface, make sure it's non-slip, make sure you're happy with it, especially if you're still on walking sticks or crutches. This will aid your recovery and also keep you much safer. And think of it also, if you have a carer, that the fact that they're having to try and lift you off the floor is a much more difficult situation than if you're able to have a bath mat. If you've really lost a lot of strength and mobility, then having handles and safety railing is obviously a must. However, if you're in that in-between stage, sometimes people forget that obvious thing of grabbing a non-slip bath mat. So this is the first one. Make sure that you get onto that as quickly as you possibly can. Then the next 2 are to do with mobility in terms of toilet seat and shower seat. So if you're really quite weak, then it's definitely much easier, especially if you've had any pelvis or back injuries, that if you have a seat that can either sit you down in the shower and keep you much safer, so you can actually relax and have a really good shower. That makes the world of difference to how you're feeling about the day. And also the same for the toilet. If you are at all lost in terms of pain getting up or down, the fact that you don't have to lower yourself down as much is a really huge effort. It certainly doesn't necessarily feel very dignified, but dignity be damned, and just get in there and have that. It makes the world of difference to the ability to go to the toilet and to feel safe getting up and down off the toilet. The first thing that you lose during any health scare is dignity, and it's a price worth losing for the fact of your better long-term health, speedy recovery. So then the third thing is thinking about the quality of pillows that you have around you. So often if you've spent any time in hospital, you've got those beds that can go up and down, and makes the world of difference to being able to maneuver your position around. So having wedge pillows, or even just raised pillows, or even a little pillow fort for anywhere that you're sitting or lying down, will help relieve any pain that you're feeling about being in certain positions. So sometimes it's a wedge pillow, sometimes it's just making sure that you can sit up at certain positions. But having access to excessive amounts of pillows or wedges is, if you've had any form of surgery or are suffering any lower back pain or pelvis and hip. So then this is where also my little friend comes into gear, that If you're having any problems with your mobility, having a little claw that's very handy to be able to get to. If you're having arthritis, then a little trigger like this makes the world of difference. And it's just little things like that, and also making sure that you put a nice little, as you can see there, a nice little clip on the end, because then you can tie it to your crutch, you can tie it to your waistband, you can tie it to things, so you're not having to funnel it and carry it around. It can just be clipped to you. And being able to pick up things off the floor makes the world of difference to how well you can get around the house and do things. So it's little things like that can make life in recovery much easier. So the last thing we're going to be talking about is, in that aspect, making sure that you have a safe place around you. Everything that you need during the day is within a good arm's reach. So it's making sure all the tablets that you'll need, water. The other big thing to remember is sometimes when you're going to be changing medications during this time, or you're going to start increasing your exercise program, that you will probably experience some sort of nausea or vomiting. So having access to a bowl that is fairly close, even if you haven't felt that way for a little while, it makes it feel much better if it's easy accessible, because sometimes that can come on quite quickly, especially when you're increasing your exercise routine and pushing through some pain barriers or unknotting some muscles or unknotting especially some scars that may have formed. So having a really good access place, having a good safe place around you that you feel very comfortable in, making sure you've got food, making sure that anything that you need is going to be fairly easily accessibly in reach, obviously your phone. The other thing with that, thinking of that, is making sure that if you're going to be going obviously to trips to the toilet, if you have a carer that is leaving for work, or obviously a family member, that you have had toilet paper renewed during the day, because often when you're feeling quite down and have suffered quite a lot of pain, it is quite an urgent trip usually, because you've had to leave it to the last minute because you haven't wanted to move. So making sure the toilet paper is all stacked up and ready to go, so you only have to get there, make it to there, tidy yourself back up and make it back again. It's little things like that that make a big difference in your day. If you can have access to cool water, obviously any blankets or anything like that if you suffer from the cold. These are all things that you don't want to be getting up and down for unless you're having to do so. Obviously, the further through the recuperation that you get, the more that you want to start accessing things like that of getting up and down. But in those initial stages of just getting back into your new environment after having a hospital stay, you want everything as simple and as easy as you can possibly make it. So having a nice, safe environment around you within that handspan of where you're going to be sitting or lying for most of the day is a really reassuring thing to have in the long-term recovery that you're looking for. The other thing sometimes to consider is if you can have access or a video link or intercom to the front door. That can make a big difference to whether you're having to get up or down or allow someone to get in or out of your house. This isn't necessarily the be-all and end-all strategy. It's certainly something to consider if you're really lost a lot of mobility, rather than and you only want to make a certain amount of effort each day to get up and down off the bed or get up and down off the chair. So my name is Ben Nedfield and I'm a leadership coach, and I've been through quite a lot of different accidents and trauma in my life, and I hope this information helps you get to this next stage of recovery. These are some of the things that you're often not told about before you leave hospital, and it's just helpful information to aid your recovery. There's going to be a few others that are in this series about helping master sleep and helping control the big envy monster that happens while you're in recovery and everyone else's life is continuing on. Those videos will be added in the description below. So if you want to dive into those later on, they'll be added to this series. I'll also be going over how sometimes pain can be very isolating and strategies for helping you cope mentally with the task ahead of getting back into what will be your new life. Let me know in the comments if these helped you, and if you have any helpful suggestions that you want to let other people know. This is all about getting people to understand that during recovery is often being bombarded with a lot of information, and it's sometimes impossible to take all that information in take all that information on board and what's important and what's not. We arrive home from a hustle and bustle of hospital to a house that is much quieter, and we're feeling a little lost and alone. I hope this series helps, and I hope this series also helps you come through your recovery a little faster and a little safer. All the best in the future. Please like and subscribe if you found this at all helpful, and please definitely leave some comments in the clip below how others can hopefully get through their recovery safer and faster. All the best, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.